This is the discussion segment of New Dawn, where we'll look at topical issue in the society and we'll invite our guests to provide solution and analyze the topic for us. This morning we have our topic as the Electoral Amendment Bill. We want to look at the implication and matter arising from it. From the Electoral Amendment Bill, recently Nigeria, last month, the two national assemblies passed the bill and is waiting for the assent of the President Muhammadu Buhari. The deadline given for the signing of the bill is December 19. So we'll look at the entirety of the Electoral Amendment Bill, and we have two gentlemen in the house this morning who will look at this topic with us and analyze it. We have Mr. Shola Babalola, a retired director from National Orientation Agency. You're welcome, sir.
Oh, thank you. Good morning, viewers.
Okay, and we have a Dr. Nicholas Zirame, a political scientist and a lecturer at the Chrisland University. You're welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you for having me one more time.
Yeah, well, let me start with the political scientist in the studio. Yeah, Electoral Amendment Bill, is beyond direct and indirect, but direct and indirect, primary has been the naughty issue here. That has been, the president has not assented to this. Why it seems lawmakers, of course, they came up with that, favored the direct primary. The executive seems to be looking towards indirect primary. And the question is it not an infringement on the independence and internal democratic workings of individual political parties when we say, okay, all political parties should explore direct primary? Because even it seems in democracy, democracy is still somehow delegatory.
Yeah, what I think about it is that, and what exactly it is that, you see, political parties, we must not lose the fact that political parties also operate within the country. So regardless of how they want to be so independent, there are still some fundamental rules of the nation that they are supposed to abide by. One. Then two, when we talk about whether it's going to upsurge their fundamental rights or what you think about. No. You see, even before the whole issue or the controversy between indirect or indirect, political parties have been at leverage as picking what they choose to do. So sometimes they say they want to do direct primaries, and in some cases they say they want to do indirect primaries. And what it means also is that there has never been any form of primaries that is not comfortable to them. It is only the fact that what we are saying now is that it's been institutionalized. And being institutionalized, it therefore means that any political party that does not adhere to that rule can be sanctioned. If you look at clause 87, it's very clear that any political party, any candidate that's going to emerge, if it doesn't pass through that process itself, becomes null and void. And that is what has brought up the whole issue now. But I think the legislators they are on the right track in terms of making laws for the country, such laws one. And let's also lose fact that our electoral process itself has become a bit, but it's been passing through a bumpy experience. So any kind of innovations that would try to at least put some sanity into the system should be welcome.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Babalola, what's your take, direct or indirect primary?
Yes, even if you have not asked me to that question, I really want to come into the discussion along that line. The truth is this: whether the parties want direct or indirect, whether the lawmakers dictate what should be done, the truth is that there are democratic principles. Democracy must be democracy. It means it must be a representation of the interests of the people involved. It means there must be equal opportunities to participate in their own affairs. It means it must be not only a representation, a true representation of the interests of the political actors in that political party. And as such, if we must graduate from being a nascent democracy, we must get to adhere to the principle of the majority rule which democracy stands for. So along that line, I think the direct primary is a representation of democratic principles, is a representation of the interests of the people. And I think it is a step in the right direction. Now, see, the lawmakers came to this conclusion because even there has not been any uniformity among political parties. They always disagree. Some of them will want direct, some will want indirect, and it will split the party into factions and the likes. So there is nothing but in a regulatory law making body directing our attention to the principles of democratic process so that our democracy can graduate from being nascent. Now, it means the people are really, the political actors are really representing their own interests. They are electing officers based on their conscience, based on their true representation.
But is indirect less democratic?
See, I don't want us to go into debate on which is less democratic, which is democratic, but we all know the principle of democracy. Indirect primary is a delegate system, Abi. Okay. Now, at that level, are you sure of the process of selection? Are you sure that so many things will not go behind the scene in a delegate system and the likes? It is, to me, the direct primary. I don't want to go into the debate. The direct primary is a true representation of democracy.
Okay, Dr. Irame, I want to still stay with the direct primary thing and the issue it's discussing. Now the governors are kicking against it, but the legislators are saying, yes, we want that. But the governors are saying, no, it will affect us somehow. So who are the leaders of those political parties if the governors are not backing direct primaries? Don't you think it will still affect their runnings, the processes, and everything the party is looking at?
Yeah, you see, first let me talk about the issue of whether indirect primary is not democratic or not. You see, if you look at how democracy itself evolved within the Greek city-state, we also, moved from the era of direct democracy to indirect democracy. And there are reasons. Not because the society wanted to just translate like that. So the state itself has evolved, right? People have become so engaged in several issues, several other things in order to make their life, make a living. So, and there was a need that, okay, we can no longer continue to afford the system where everybody comes to vote. And that's why we got to the issue about indirect democracy. And also, it is the case in direct primaries and indirect primaries. And in all sincerity, except for the way we want to practice our democratic system, none of the system does not have both its merit and demerit.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Yeah, no system does not have the merits and demerits. They both have their merits and demerits, because I've also heard the issue about some INEC staffs complaining that the direct one now is going to cost them more. In terms of finance, in terms of logistics, in terms of organizations and so on. Even the political parties also make those complaints and everything. But whatever it is, if we are going to face direct primaries, we have to give it the best. That's one. Then coming to the question, you talked about the governors
and the legislators.
And the legislators. There's always been that Cold War in terms of how do we make rules. And I've heard all kinds of arguments. Some say it's going to affect the governors. Some say it's going to be to the interest of the senators and the legislators. But what you must know is that first, there are no rules you make that does not affect one or two people. So to think that it's not going to affect one or two people, we are only making a mistake, one. Two, we must look at the long-term goal of the policy or the rule. And if it's in the interest of the entire majority of Nigerians, so why then do we get ourselves bothered about some governors saying they're not going to be governors forever? Even the legislators who have made the rules, they're not going to be legislators forever. So if the legislators are on the right path and they feel that they need to give it all they think they can do, or the best they can do to ensure that so that we don't have that problem. Look at what is happening in Zamfara State now, and it's still not going to. It's not unlikely other states are going to face that. These issues bring about the issues about parallel primaries, conflicting judgments from a judiciary. Even in Anambra State, as of 2 days ago or yesterday, the whole issue about Soludo was put to rest. That means some people were also saying that it should be disqualified because of party primaries and some other things like that. So if we look at this issue very well, the best way we can look about it is that the senators or the House or the legislators must ensure that first what they are doing is within the parameters of the law. And if it's in the parameters of the law, they need to jettison all kinds of politicking within it, give it its best, then ensure that this is what is adopted. Then Nigerians understand that the political parties who are the key actors are also carried along in the process. Because if you give that leverage to them, they would always want what will be in their interest. Pursue what's in the interest of the entire population.
Okay, Mr. Shola Babalola, I'm asking this question for the governors and legislators because we know that each governors will have their own followers, their own loyalists. We have their own loyalists too. Would it affect those followers at any point of the political journey?
Let me put a talk, then you get the picture clearer.
Okay.
Won't it affect the generality of the masses? Won't it affect the majority in the political party? On the table now, you have only narrowed it looking at two actors. And I think the majority of party people is the one whose interest matters in all this. Most. The others too, their interest matters. But I'm still saying it. See, an officer as a mobilizer, I cannot but still refer us to the concept of democracy that attempts to carry all together. They are saying that the people are the ones governing themselves, Abi? But because it is not easy for an individual, everybody to occupy a seat, now they have to go through the process of election. And in the process of election, they have to vote for who to represent them. And we must be sure that representation is really followed.
It's of good quality.
Exactly. So now back to your question. Don't forget, maybe we have forgotten that on this table. The legislature is of their constituency, of their people. The governor is the administrator of all. And of course, the legislatures will not come to a conclusion in the House without sampling opinions of their constituency people, including their political parties in this regard. So I want to believe they have made the best of the judgment, looking at the scenarios, looking at the peculiarities, looking at the facts, and it.
Okay, but the big question now is how ready are we for direct primaries? Well, the House of Reps has invited the ANEC chairman over a funding challenge for direct primaries. Well, every political party have the database of their members will also be part of. Really ready for that?
See, the truth is this: each political organized as an organized setting for their parties, except we want to tell lies. There is no time Nigerians are not ready. If change is sudden, we know how to adjust, go, and give the best out of it if we are sincere about that. It's not how ready are we. We want to approach it with all sincerity. I think this matters more. If we are going to approach it with all sincerity, I mean, the political party does not have a register. Luckily, all of them are registered very recently. Do you want to tell me they don't know themselves? I cannot go there now and they don't know I'm not a political party carrying member. So that's it. And don't forget, I think he said something. There is no option adopted that does not have demerits. There is no exercise that will not have some faults. In most cases, even academically, when they say excellent, it doesn't mean you scored 100%. But what we are saying is that the benefits are sufficient enough to give credibility to that process. I think on that note, the legislatures to me are on track. The parties, and there is still enough time, the parties to me will cope if they are really sincere. Then, of course, if our democracy is advanced, we should go for the interest of who matters. It is the interest of the majority, like I think he pointed out something like that. And see, it's not that the two of them does not have their credible aspects, but it's more with that original democracy, and one will be less controversial than the other.
Dr. Rabi, as democratic as direct, and I'm saying even in democracy, democracy is still delegatory. Every one of us, we have representatives in the House of Reps, in the Senate, and they are there to represent our interest. So is it not as democratic as direct primaries?
Yeah, like I just said, that even the national assemblies that are making these laws, they are a product of indirect representation. One. Not. You see, sometimes it's also good when you have comparative analysis. Let's look at some countries who also adopt this kind of system. Is it working for them or not? And if it's working, is it working for them? And just like we have been saying sometimes, what will make direct or indirect function effectively in the country? It is the kind of support the political parties choose to give to the process. Now, in polling units, it's a known thing now that in the through INEC register, how many people are supposed to vote there. So if we say we want to do direct, it's a matter of we know how many names are here. But in terms of administrative convenience, people say let's resort to indirect. Now, what has made indirect a bit problematic is the issue of lack of accountability. We can agree that we are going to vote this candidate, and the person we are sending in there goes to Abuja and say they say
some other things go on,
and the process was dollarized, and along the line something happened, and when he comes back, he doesn't even think that any question. So for him, there, and he did what he feels like doing, which is not supposed to be the whole essence of why he was picked in the first place. And that's why we'll come to the issue about how do we ensure direct is working. And at this point, true to them, in fairness to the legislators and the political parties, we should not be talking about indirect again. We should be talking about how do but on there's no even institutions, even in labor unions and organizations and everything like that, you don't want to make decisions and you say let's go outside and queue up in the assembly, you say what you want to say, you say what you want to say, because we'll also end up just want to right, which is also a problem about democracy. Reaching decisions is always a problem one, and democracy and everything like that. It's also more like a system, which has always been the criticism, that majority always have their way, always have their say, but the minority will always have their way, because the issue of the issue about elite and elite conspiracy and elitocracy, which has always been a problem in it. So the vote process, none of them is undemocratic. What will make it democratic? It is the kind of support, the way we think, and the commitment and the political parties give to it.
Okay, Mr. Shola Babalola. Okay, you want to add something?
We cannot be talking of being undemocratic. I had said it before. But what we are saying is that, really, and I think the way he spoke, he said something along that line. What we are saying is that there is a measure of confidence in one than the other. See, one in indirect, yes, go and represent us. At that point of representation, anything can still happen. Direct, yes, anything can still happen, but you still have a play on your conscience. You still have a play on your conscience at that particular point. And even if you sell your conscience, you have yourself perpetually to be blamed when things
go
wrong. You get it? You will even blame yourself. And if you have opportunity again, there is tendency for you to correct that. You see, but indirect, like I said, it's not about being democratic or not. But, you know, democracy is actually representation of the people. People. Yes, there is one party system, there are two party system, there is unitary democracy, there is this, there is that. But the truth is that it boils down to the kind of representation. So that is where I'm pinching my tent with the fact that a direct system might serve the interest more. Though, like the major disadvantage is this cost intensive, and it could go rowdy, and managing people within the Nigerian concept.
It's not also isolated from manipulation.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I said managing people.
Yeah, okay.
Managing people, it is not. But the extent of manipulation, you may not be able to, on a general note. Okay. I'm not talking on an exceptional note. On a general note, you may not be able to compare it with that of indirect. And anyway, Nigerians in most cases believe indirect is a factor of the executives, that they determine who plays the and the likes. So on the whole, yes, the two are democratic. But the truth is that one gives confidence to the general majority of the actors within that process.
Okay, let me read a paragraph from...
You were trying to ask me a question.
Yes, let me read a paragraph from the Nation newspaper. It says, an unconfirmed report said 500 billion naira additional cost may be incurred by the commission, that is INEC, if direct primary is adopted. Although the president had requested for comment from INEC on the Electoral Act Amendment Bill, the agency has not acted on the president's request. So where I'm going now is the 500 billion naira that it will be an addition cost to the whole process.
See,
what will affect the economy? The security.
Just calm down. Calm down. See, democracy is a cost-intensive exercise. Definitely. But the truth is that if there is sincerity, the gains of democracy cannot be compared with the cost that would have gone into it. The most important thing is that whatever money that goes into it, if there is sincerity, we shall benefit at the end of the day. Because, for example, if all political actors elect according to their conscience, the person goes there, carry the interest of the people with all sincerity, corruption will be minimized.
But the question is, can we afford to spend that much? 500 billion.
You and I cannot conclude on whether we can afford it or not, because we are not privy to the financial statistics of the nation. Corruption is not even making us to believe we cannot afford something. Because when you look at the volumes of the billions being consumed illegally, then you will discover that how much is 500 naira to throw into an exercise that will rehabilitate, that will reconcile, that will regenerate, that will correct the fortune of Nigerians. That's my position.
So are you not perturbed if truly INEC will spend that much?
What I'm saying is this: if that much will eventually turn the fortune of this country,
But well, that we may not say. Well, that we can't say.
and that is it. And we don't even know. See, if we can afford it, we don't know whether that money is available or not. Yes, it's on the high side. We are not saying it is not on the high side, but we don't know the statistics on the table. And I want to believe that for the legislators that actually concluded on this, they will have some insights into the financial process. They approve budgets they look into the budgets of the INEC. The overall budget is placed before them. We don't know what they see.
Okay. Dr. Nicholas, I want him to, from the political scientist angle, the money, though it is an unconfirmed report, and INEC has not come out to say, yes, we are going to spend 500 billion naira. But if from what we've heard from the report, do you think that money is not just too much and it will affect our economy?
Well, I would want to say, is the money too much? The answer is just like what you said. It might not necessarily be too much if it's aimed at addressing the problem. But what I begin to see, or what I envisage, is that they are going to the bill itself is likely going to face some brick walls. Some of these issues will be issues that the executive will also make as a counter argument to say that, yes, this is a good bill, but I don't think we are ripe to fund this.
And the president might not sign it.
That's exactly what I think, one. Then two, it also goes back to the whole issue of transmitting results. You know, they ended up settling it in a more, the issue was neither here nor there.
Yeah.
They said those who can.
Who can, yes,
should do.
according to the
Those
bill.
who can't, should do what
Go
they
ahead.
can do. Go ahead and what they can. Then you ask yourself, in a system where we already have loopholes already in the system, and you are telling those who can't not to bother, you are also giving those who are also doing to think that we can also go the other way around.
There are options.
And so we're not able. We are giving them options, right? So I think that 500 billion at this point to INEC alone, and let's not forget that is not the election per se. It's like a pre-election, just primaries, right? If that would cost INEC that money, what would the election cost? So in the long run, the executive could always see some other loopholes as grounds to say, yes, this is a very mature bill, it's a good bill, it's landmark, it's watershed, but we cannot, because of one or two things. And let's not forget that INEC is not the one funding it, right? So even if you call the INEC chairman several times, he could only come to tell you the logistic aspect of it and the administrative aspect of it and how prepared they are. But in terms of this is the refund, to carry out the task.
And how to get the fund.
And how to get the fund, which can be very problematic. And that point I see that the clause itself might want to die in natural death at that point.
Well, Mr. Babalola, President Buhari has written INEC, seeking advice on direct primaries and orders. I mean, what does that portend, really?
Don't forget, even the legislatures too give opportunity to INEC to determine whatever is the one, I'm not talking of indirect or indirect.
The process.
Indirect. The process, they have opportunity to determine whatever suits them. Normally the president administratively cannot put his assent without asking for opinions of the INEC that is so central to the organization of elections. So I think he has taken a step in the right direction. See, those in the executive formation, special advisors and this, they may not see the practical implications and practices of this direct and indirect than INEC. And as such, ordinarily, even as a director in the office, I cannot approve anything without sending to the related department for advice. I think he has done well. It is a step in the right direction. He doesn't want to use his subjective opinion because his opinion is not a professional in that area.
Okay, well, Dr. Rame, let's talk about the monitoring capacity of INEC. If this comes into fruition, can INEC also annul direct primary in some quarters if perhaps it wasn't properly done? Do they also have that power?
Yeah, you see, first, if you look at the clause very well, it also says that it must be in the presence of staff from the commission. It is very clear. Now, look at the trends of primaries, either direct or indirect. You see, regardless of what it is, political parties try as much as possible to ensure that somebody for INEC is there. Because it's fundamental. Yes, you did your primaries, whether kangaroo, parallel, or anything you want to call it. Who was the INEC staff who witnessed?
On duty.
On duty. And if there's no INEC staff there, it's assumed that what you did,
It has no legal backing.
it has no legal backing. So it means that INEC has that power to say, no, you didn't invite us, or we did not monitor the process, or you told us the election, the primary was going to hold in Adama Sigba Stadium, and suddenly, less than 22 hours, you push people to Papalanto because of one or two reasons or the other. The INEC commissioner has the right to write a report that I was waiting here based on the invitation they told me, and they did something, so the process was not monitored. That's one. Then it also means that there can be legal implications. INEC can also cancel, and political parties or political actors say, no, we are going to court. What you did is not legal, it's not right.
Yeah. So that's why I'm talking about the legality now.
So because what it therefore means is that INEC itself can, because INEC is empowered. Don't forget that it's not just about direct primary. INEC is also empowered. You have to be there. So if INEC says we are not going to go there, and if INEC counsels and the political parties take INEC to court, it is the court that will eventually dictate who is right and who's wrong. But most likely, it's not going to be in the favor of the political parties because the law is clear. It is clear. And the best way we can do, just like what I've said, if we want to support a process, is to ensure that INEC staff is there does not stop some political party from doing what they want to do. But what is important is that there must be somebody there from the commission who should monitor the activity. It's clear.
All right, now let's look at the entire electoral process now.
Okay.
Direct primary, what will be the benefit to the electoral process? In what way will it affect the electoral process and in turn Nigerians? Because the whole thing is about Nigeria and the growth of democracy.
Yeah, you see, if you look at election, the trend of election over time, there's also what they call a voter appetite currently being done. Then there's also what they call a voter's resignation to fate. It doesn't matter who you vote for. You just go and vote for one person, what they plan to do,
They will do.
right? And there's also been this absence of confidence building. Even the political parties themselves have not really, justified reasons why people went out to vote for them. Now, the direct primary is coming. People now feel that it will give them more nuanced way of participating in the process. And let's also forget that direct primary we're also talking about, it means that everybody must come to vote. If a councillor is going to emerge today, everybody within that locality must be part of the process. One, it therefore means that the electors themselves, who have always been on the receiving end, it gives them room to scrutinize
It's coming on board.
who's coming on board. It gives them that room, and it also gives them confidence. Then it also instills discipline in whosoever has been voted for, because the process itself is a rigorous process. Direct primary is not a very easy process. So political parties might still be on the process 3 days. Counting, queuing up. Some might say we went there and there was rain and there was violence, because you need to see some of the direct primaries that have been taking place in some states, how violent they are. And people run away from the center, they say we are postponing it till tomorrow, right? That's on the one part. Then the electoral process itself. It means that some of the leaders who would emerge will be put to task. Because the whole electoral process itself is becoming more like a system, a systemic challenge, that the problem, you cannot place the problem solely on the tables of the political actors themselves. The electorate themselves have a problem, and other institutions surrounding them. It also, direct primary itself would also instill discipline among political parties in terms of recruitment of political actors, political culture, political socialization, and some other things like that. Then, in the long run, the entire process itself we are talking about will bring some form of sanity into the process. Because at the moment, what we are saying is we have some set of political allies who don't feel that they are in any way entitled, to the electorate. In fact, I've heard one or two people say, didn't I buy the position? So you guys have mortgaged your future, right? And the process which those guys also come on board, that does not mean that direct primary itself cannot be manipulated. In fact, there's no system you want to print in the country now that cannot be monetized. But at least some form of confidence would come there, and those who have been, emerged within that process. And it also makes sure, it also means that political actors themselves have so much work to do. You have so much work to do. God has those days that you'll be out of the country, and some people are campaigning on your behalf. Right? So let's see, and let's give the system some form of confidence, and to see that this innovation, if it's injected into the system, it might put some little changes in the electoral process. But let's not forget that if there's going to be a change in the electoral process, it's not a one-day thing.
Okay, but the final process stops on the table of the president, if he signs or not.
Absolutely.
Mr. Babalola, what if the president does not sign?
Before I answer that question, aside from all he said, the direct primaries gives the political actors, the contestants, more homework to do. It must be manifesto based, because they must campaign now. Since everybody must at least vote, unlike you just have to lobby the delegates. Then again, it has a demerit. It's not, is it a demerit? No. It gives a security challenge. Then it means the security agencies must be at alert.
Up and doing.
Up and doing, because managing more people is different from managing a section of the people. But at the end of the day, I think direct primary can work if well managed with our conscience. Now,
I said, what if the president does not assent to the bill?
Of course, now, if he doesn't assent to the bill, he will give some reasons why it did not. There is always a reason, and it is returned to the House. Not signing it does not mean outright rejection. It might mean that some homeworks was not done properly, and some things could be done based on his own observation. And if that is corrected, it might escape through another assent. But if at the end of the day it is not assented to, the president has the prerogative to
power to do that.
Well, Dr. Rame, as we round off this particular segment, it seems to me that the weaknesses of indirect primaries may still come up under direct primaries. You've talked about monetization. That can also be done with direct primaries, though at a very high cost. You've talked about manipulation. Somehow that can also creep in. So are you also not worried by this, that despite the high cost, it would cause additional cost, especially for INEC, and INEC also having maybe more burden? INEC should conduct elections. Now they will be involved in the internal workings of the party. We talked about how feasible will it be? Can they annul primary elections if not properly conducted or not? So are you not worried by this?
Well, I'm a bit worried, and just like I already allayed my fear, that they both have merits and demerits, and none of them is immune to manipulations, right? And I'm also worried about the level of preparedness of INEC, to participate in direct primaries across the 36 states of the country. But, however, moving forward about the whole issues, if the legislators feel that this is in the interest of the populace, and the president eventually signs it. If we want to adopt ourselves or subject ourselves to direct primaries, we'll begin to start with an experimental way of carrying it out. What it means is that the first 2-3 direct primaries that will act as litmus tests. There are going to be challenges here and there. We'll now begin to harvest on those challenges and see how do we go. And let's not forget that our democracy is an evolving democracy. So it's subject to, it's not a quick fix thing that we think that because some of these problems are there. And let's also forget that there are also some people who deliberately do not want most of these things to work because of their own ways. They are fashionable to manipulate the process. So we'll have that challenge. But that challenge will not be substantial enough to think that if we adopt direct democracy, we'll now begin to say, no, we made a mistake. What it therefore means is that we have adopted direct democracies. What are the challenges we are facing and how do we address them and how do we move forward?
All right, and that's how far we'll go because of time. We know it's a very broad topic that it's a very broad topic, we know, but we have to call it up right now so that the other segment of the discussion session can come on. And we want to thank you so very much for coming on the show, Mr. Babalola.
Thank you. Thank you, viewers.
And Dr. Irami,
thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure.
All right, I will call off the segment of the show, and when we'll come back, it will be with another set of guests who will be discussing another topical issue on the program this morning, and we'll be discussing electoral amendment bill and the implication to electoral reform and the Nigeria and Nigerians as it were. We'll see you later after this break.